What started as a question about DOJ independence spiraled into one of the most explosive Senate clashes of the year. Pam Bondi didn't just dodge questions. She went straight for the jugular, accusing a sitting U.S. senator of lying about his military service. Buckle up.
You're Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Just so the American people understand, this issue of weaponization of justice goes to the core of the integrity of our criminal justice system. And I think we can all agree that no individual, no group should be targeted simply because they are a political opponent or because the President of the United States has some personal animosity toward them. You've just said that President Trump is the most transparent president in history, tragically and chillingly. You may be right when it comes to criminal justice, because far from ending weaponization of justice, I would submit, Madam Attorney General, that President Trump has embodied it. And we have a record. It is a public record of his express instructions that certain individuals be investigated. The Attorney General of New York, Tish James, my colleague Adam Schiff, the former CISA director, Chris Krebs, the DHS former chief of staff, Miles Taylor. There's a list. And he has been transparent. In fact, 5 days before the indictment of James Comey, he put this post up as instructions to you. He didn't mince words. He was very open and public that you should indict James Comey and others because they are guilty as hell. No more delay. Now, 5 days before you indicted, or a grand jury at your instructions indicted James Comey. I'd like to know from you what conversations you've had with President Trump about the indictment of James Comey.
Senator, I am not going to discuss any conversations I have or have not had with the President of the United
Did you
States.
see that
You're an attorney. You have a law degree, and you know that I'm not going to do that. I also find it fascinating, because I'll keep fighting to ensure that law enforcement and the judicial process move forward without political interference. No one is above the law, not even the president. That's a quote from you, Senator Blumenthal, in 2017.
Well, let me ask you then, when you saw that
No
post,
one is above the law. That was your quote.
When you saw that post, did you talk to anybody in the White House?
I am not going to discuss any conversations I have, nor any investigations,
So
nor
you were unwilling to
any
tell
pending
this committee
cases.
about conversations with the White House
And if I
regarding
may
James
continue,
Comey's indictment.
and if I may
Let me show
continue,
you a picture.
James Comey was indicted by one of the most liberal grand juries in the United States.
The night before James Comey's indictment, you had dinner with the President of the United States. Pretty intimate group.
Actually, there were a lot of people there that night. That's a great
Was James
picture.
Comey discussed at that dinner?
I love that picture. That's a great picture. And there were a lot of people there that night. I think the
Well-
entire cabinet was there.
Did you discuss James Comey with the President of the United States? He was sitting just to your left.
Well, 2 seats down. Yes, 2 seats down. And I am not going to discuss any
I'm going to take
conversations
that
I've
as a
had or not
yes,
have with the
because
President
the
of the
American
United
public
States.
is entitled to know, Madam Attorney General.
The entire cabinet was at that
Whether
dinner,
you
too,
took instructions from President Trump after he told you very directly to indict James Comey, which is weaponization of the Department of Justice.
Oh,
You know,
oh, oh,
I
you-
want to agree with my colleague, Senator Hawley, that weaponization of our justice system must end. That's the reason that I propose legislation, and I challenge him and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to join me in legislation that would create a statutory right of action for people who are selectively or maliciously prosecuted for political reasons. It would codify your manual, the Department of Justice manual, on political prohibitions against political considerations in charging decisions, and prohibit the White House from intervening, President Trump and any other president from intervening in charging decisions. It would make reforms to the grand jury process. You've just said this grand jury was liberal. we should reform the grand jury process to ensure that the government is not abusing its power and authority, and it will require transparency and accountability reforms at DOJ so that you will and other attorneys general be held accountable for these kinds of decisions. Will you join me in supporting that kind of reform?
Senator Blumenthal, I find it so interesting that you didn't bring any of this up during President Biden's administration when he was doing everything to protect Hunter Biden, his son. And I think you just saw what Director Radcliffe just released.
You know, this is an effort to be positive.
If I can finish answering the question, I'm not going to yell over you. I'm not going to get in the gutter with you. But information that the Biden administration told them not to investigate Hunter Biden's involvement with Ukraine. I'm not going to be lectured to you about integrity by someone who lied about being in the military just to be elected a senator.
The merger between Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and Juniper Network was settled. You authorized the settlement. It was the subject of a lawsuit to block it. The settlement produced virtually no concessions from Hewlett-Packard. It was a settlement that prompted criticism from the Antitrust Division. Did you authorize that settlement yourself?
As I stated earlier, Gail Slater is doing an incredible job running the antitrust unit. And as I stated earlier, that is still a pending matter. As you should know with a law degree, that all mergers, if I can finish answering the question.
I'm going to,
if I could finish, no, I'm answering the question.
Because my time is limited.
No, well then don't ask me a question. So,
let me just ask you,
as I said, you have a law degree. You know that not only are mergers agreed upon, but they have to go to a court of law to be approved. It's a multi-step process. And as I said earlier, that is still pending. And I have full faith in Gail Slater.
And Ms. Slater reportedly objected to the settlement.
Reportedly.
And moreover, two of her top officials were fired, Roger Alford and Bill Sinner. Did you authorize and direct those firings after they objected to the settlement?
I am not going to discuss personnel matters or pending litigation in my office.
Let me ask you about another merger. The merger involving two home health care agencies on favorable terms, likely to drive up costs for millions of America. The Transportation Department's rule to provide compensation to travelers impacted by airline-caused flight delays, which was canceled. The merger of Skydance and Paramount, after Paramount's ownership took a number of steps favorable to the president. These kinds of mergers belie the claims that President Trump himself has made, that this administration will stop big corporate mergers that ultimately benefit the owners of those corporations rather than consumers or ordinary, everyday Americans.
Senator,
let me ask you about
you just listed, you just gave a list of many mergers.
I have a question
Can you talk to me about the issue with these mergers?
I do have a question. In the merger that took place,
which merger? You've listed many.
Involving American Express GBT. I understand that Brian Ballard, longtime backer and head of the law firm where you worked, was instrumental in lobbying the Justice Department to drop that lawsuit. It was dismissed, so it's not subject to a court review. What conversations did you have with Mr. Ballard?
Senator Blumenthal, I cannot believe that you would accuse me of impropriety when you lied about your military service.
I am
you
not
lied.
asking
You admitted you lied to be elected a U.S. senator. You lied. How dare you? I'm a career prosecutor. Don't you ever challenge my integrity. I have abided by every ethics standard. Do not question my ability to be fair and impartial as Attorney General. And anything with my former firm, Ballard Partners.
Thank you.
Senator Lee has asked for the chair.
Yeah, just wanted to note for the record, the Paramount merger that he referenced was not within the Department of Justice's ambit. That was at the FCC, not the Department of Justice. Attorney General Bondi would have had nothing to do with that. Thanks.
And that was why I asked Senator Lee.
This hearing went completely off the rails. Senator Richard Blumenthal pressed Attorney General Pam Bondi on alleged political interference inside the Department of Justice, specifically whether President Donald Trump personally pushed for indictments of perceived enemies like James Comey. Bondi refused to answer, repeatedly. But then, the moment no one saw coming, Bondi abruptly flipped the script, accusing Blumenthal of lying about his military service to win office, a reference to long-standing controversy over how he described his Vietnam-era record. The room froze. What followed was an oversight. It was political combat. Accusations of DOJ weaponization collided with counterclaims of hypocrisy, ethics violations, and personal integrity. This wasn't about policy anymore. It was about credibility, power, and who gets to claim the moral high ground. If this exchange tells us anything, it's that the fight over the Justice Department is no longer behind closed doors. It's happening live, on camera, and at full volume.